Alors, vous n'avez pas de questions?
Go.
Je me présente, je m'appelle Salwa Elena, étudiante journaliste à l'Institut supérieur d'information de la communication arabe. Donc ma question est dédiée à M. Ayumu Watanabe. Donc on sait que le Japon est une source et une référence dans le cinéma d'animation. Donc qu'est-ce qui fait du Japon un leader du cinéma d'animation dans le monde?
そうですね、ラバットにあるそのジャーナリズムの宣伝がコミュニケーションがものすごく学生でございます。日本はそのアニメーションによって非常にやっぱりその大国であり発信国であることは広く知られていますけれども、渡辺監督から見てその日本がそのアニメーションの世界においてそういったリーダー的な立場に立っているその背景とかあるいは理由についてどのように考えでしょうか。
そうですね、まず、どうなんでしょうね、それはやっぱりだから外から日本を見たときにそのリーダーシップを取っているかのようなあれはあるかもしれませんけど、佐藤僕の感覚ではそんなにこうリードしている覚悟では実はないんです、まず第一にしてほしいです。
Peut-être d'un point de vue extérieur, on a pu avoir cette impression que le Japon prendrait une sorte d'initiative d'être en tête dans l'évolution mondiale de l'animation, mais quand on évolue à l'intérieur du système, ce que je peux vous dire, c'est pas une impression qu'on ressent vraiment.
もちろんだからその産業としてその大きな、経済的効果を生むことは事実なんですけど、でもこと文化的なそのアニメーションの位置として考えると、僕はむしろその世界の目を見たときに非常にその世界からその追随を受けているというよりはもうそのレベルに差がないというけれども、むしろ世界的なレベルで今アニメーションが非常に高騰としているといういい意味で非常にこうふつふつと飽き立っているという感じがするので、決して日本がリードしているというよりは、今一緒にこうなんだろうな熱くなってきているという感じをもうここに来ても非常に強く感じます。
Et donc, bien sûr, en termes d'industrie et d'envergure de l'industrie, il y a une industrie importante de l'animation au Japon qui, bien sûr, génère un effet économique important. Mais si on réfléchit en termes culturels, si on réfléchit à l'animation en termes culturels, et qu'on jette un coup d'œil à ce qui se passe à travers le monde, moi je ne vois pas de différence d'évolution, de stade, etc., d'importance, de taille entre le Japon et le reste du monde. C'est-à-dire que pour moi, il se passe plein de choses en termes culturels dans l'animation à travers le monde, et il y a, on peut dire dans un sens positif du terme, il y a une espèce de chaos qui génère beaucoup d'activité, beaucoup d'énergie. Et quand je viens dans un festival comme ci, c'est vraiment quelque chose de ressenti. Il se passe plein de choses en même temps, un peu partout dans le monde, et donc il n'y a pas vraiment de pays qui soit leader, à mon avis, sur le plan culturel.
Bonjour, ma question est aussi pour M. Watanabe. Bienvenue au Maroc, tout d'abord. Nous sommes ravis de vous avoir parmi nous. En fait, ma question est comment trouvez-vous l'inspiration pour raconter des histoires qui parlent à tout le monde, partout dans le monde, alors que vous partez, comme on voit dans beaucoup de films animés, vous partez d'inspiration très japonaise, avec beaucoup d'allégories, avec l'eau, le vent, la terre, etc., le contact, le rapport avec la nature. Quel est le secret, si on veut, du succès, sachant que dans le contexte marocain, par exemple, il y a énormément de fans à travers les générations de films animés qui ont été doublés même en arabe depuis les années 80 et 90. Enfin, je fais partie aussi des jeunes qui cherchent beaucoup les séries animées japonaises, les films animés sur Internet, etc. Quel est le secret de ce succès qu'on peut comparer au secret du succès de la crêpe bretonne?
D'accord. Du coup, crêpe bretonne. 渡辺さんにご質問ございます。まずようこそよろしくお願いします。大変嬉しく思います。いらしていただいたことを。そうですね。まずお聞きしたいのはそうですね。あらゆる世代に日本そして日本のみならず全世界にアピールできる物語のインスピレーションはどこから来ているのかと言いますのも非常にやっぱり 一方で非常に日本的なところから出発されてるわけですよね。例えばアレゴリーの非常にやっぱりこう豊かな、その世界観だったり、あるいは自然との関係ですね。水とか風とか土とのつながりとか、そういうようなものを非常にやっぱり強く感じるその世界観ですけれども、それが世界的に成功するその秘訣とはどこにあるのか。例えばモロッコのコンテクストとして申し上げますと、世代を問わず本当に非常に多くのファンが日本の作品をテレビシリーズでも劇場版でも、探し求めている。私もその一人ですけれども、80年代90年代以降もアラビア語にも吹き替えられた作品が多く、とにかく非常にやっぱり広く認識されていますけれども、秘訣は例えばフランスのブルターニュにあるクレープのこう秘密の秘伝のねレシピがあるようなものがありますけれども、そういうのはありますでしょうか。
まず一つ言うのは、あれですね、きっといろんな人にとって最大公約数的に追体験しやすいような要素をそもそも取り入れるのが多分日本人は好きなんですよ。ですから分かりやすいというのは説明するわけじゃなくて、感覚的に皮膚感的になんかこう同意ができるような作品を丁寧に描くっていうのが日本の作品の特徴というか、もしあえて言うのであれば、そういったところが一つとして挙げられる。
Une chose que je peux vous dire peut-être, c'est que il me semble exact qu'au Japon, les gens qui travaillent dans l'animation au Japon aiment à s'emparer et à traiter de sujets pour lesquels le spectateur va réussir à s'identifier, en tout cas à vivre à partager l'expérience en fait, qui est proposée dans le film, ce qui est proposé, donc que vivent les personnages, en refaire lui-même une expérience médiate. C'est vrai que ça c'est quelque chose que les Japonais aiment beaucoup. Donc c'est pas simplement d'être intelligible, d'être facile à suivre sur le plan de la progression des enjeux narratifs, etc. Mais vraiment en termes de sensations, c'est-à-dire de revenir à un partage des sensations et donc s'attaquer à des thématiques qui sont familières en termes de sensations, par exemple du quotidien. Voilà. Ça, il me semble que ça c'est un élément de réponse peut-être.
Je pense qu'aujourd'hui on parle de plus en plus de ce qu'on appelle le marché du cinéma d'animation mondial et au Maroc. Ma question est pour M. Watanabe. Comment est-ce que le Japon peut intervenir pour aider le Maroc à créer ce marché du cinéma d'animation et à le développer par la suite?
今アニメーションの市場が世界的なもので、ちょっとモロッコからの質問でぜひ日本にお聞きしたいのは何でしょうか。モロッコにおけるアニメーション市場の、成長と拡大のために日本からどのような力添えをいただけるのかっていうようなよくわからないんですけど。
なるほど。これでもモロッコで直感的に感じるのは、熱意は間違いなくある。アニメーションに対しての興味、情熱は他の国とそう変わらないぐらい、おそらくこの国は秘めている。
D'abord, ce que je peux vous dire, moi, instinctivement, je dirais, moi je ressens ici, depuis que je suis là, vraiment très fortement une passion pour le cinéma d'animation. Il y a vraiment un intérêt très fort, passionné pour l'animation, qui n'a rien à envier à ce qui peut exister dans d'autres pays.
あとはですから、しっかりと育てることを丁寧に育てるための施設と、やっぱ人を作り上げるための期間ですね、そういったものがもしあると、よりそんな完成に向けて道筋が確実なものになる気がします。ですから、人と熱が確実に合う。それはしっかりと資料と土壌ですね。アニメーションの体験をさせる場所と、もちろんその出力としてアニメーションを、メディアとして表に出していくっていうチャンネルも必要だと思うんですけど、それもすでに他から輸入することに確立されていると思いますので、あとはやっぱり自国で作るっていうことに最初はうまくいかなくてもチャレンジしていくということが大事だと思います。
Alors, une Une fois qu'on a dit ça, je pense qu'il y a une chose, c'est on a besoin, il y a sans doute un besoin d'institutions, de lieux de formation, des gens aussi pour former les talents, les compétences. Et donc il y a sans doute une période qu'il faut envisager effectivement de formation qui devrait rendre les choses beaucoup plus stables, je dirais, beaucoup plus établies. Il y a besoin, je pense, de lieux comme celui-ci, donc où on peut faire une expérience de l'animation qui ne soit pas simplement une expérience qui passe par les médias. Donc, il y a une production, il y a une diffusion. Donc, vous avez au Maroc des médias qui diffusent de l'animation, et ça s'est établi, y compris par exemple en important des productions étrangères. Maintenant, si vous voulez produire des films d'animation ou des séries d'animation marocaines, je pense que ce qui est important, c'est d'avoir cette passion d'un côté, et puis les institutions qui rendent cela possible d'autre part. Et si vous avez la volonté effectivement de travailler à des projets animés, même si ça ne marche pas au début forcément selon vos espoirs, il y a une construction qui se met en place et qui devrait amener à une forme de maturation.
それがもしだから僕自身ができることがあれば僕もいつでも赴くつもりです非常にそんなにその世界を驚かすそんなに時間かかんないです。
Et moi, à titre personnel, si je peux vous aider à cet effort localement ici, je le ferai avec plaisir. Moi, je viens quand vous voulez. Et je pense que c'est une question de temps avant qu'effectivement des productions marocaines, à leur tour aussi, suscitent la surprise et l'engouement.
سؤالي موجه إلى المخرج. من أصعب المراحل التي يمر بها أي صاحب نص، من أصعب المراحل أنت تجيب الحالة العربية، من أصعب المراحل التي يمر بها صاحب نص يعني مخرج هو المنتج. فكيف اقتنعت بفكرة النص لكي تنتجه للمخرج؟ هذا السؤال موجه إلى المخرج طبعا. نعم، كيف نلت يعني تفضل. دابا السؤال ديالنا هو كيفاش انا كصاحب نص اللي هو المخرج كيفاش اقنع المنتج، لان من اصعب المراحل هي تلك العلاقه ما بين المنتج والمخرج، خصوصا واننا امام فيلم التحريك، يعني كيف اقنعه لكي ينتج له الفيلم.
The question for Sam Kadi was that
It's for Alex, right?
Yeah.
No, Alex.
Okay, production is the hardest step of filmmaking. So how did you succeed on convincing Sam of the script, and how did you make him convinced about the project and confident about it to work with you on it?
هل هي صداقة أم هو النص؟
Is it friendship or connection about having the same interests or what?
So I've known Sam for a long time, 15 years. I've known him for about 15 years. Our paths have crossed many times, but we've never had a project, either he or I, a project that suited our mutual interests. But Lamia's poem was that project. And so once we started working on that, I reached out to Sam, and it was the easiest part of the production, was getting Sam to agree to be a part of it. There were a lot of hard parts of the production, but that was the easiest part. So Sam came on, and it was, I thought, crucial to have somebody who had a Syrian background to be part. I'm not Syrian, and even though the story I was trying to tell was a universal story, it's rooted in the particulars of the Syrian experience. Now, I spent a long time researching and talking to a number of Syrian refugees, many actually, and in fact, the name Lamia, the very first person I spoke to was a little girl, refugee from Syria named Lamia. So that's, in my mind, the name just stuck, and I just made it Lamia's poem. But even though I did that research, I still felt it was essential to have a partner who was Syrian and who could really help guide a lot of those very important details to get them right. It was important to me to get them right. So that's really why I wanted to have Sam on the project, and it's been fantastic.
In all honesty, I mean, it was the easiest thing, as Alex said. I mean, it's like, how would you say no to a project that speaks about Rumi, as we all like huge fans of Rumi, and a Syrian girl, which is so dear to my heart, the story itself. I mean, just because I was born and raised in that country, so it was not hard at all. Even though I've never done animation before, I've never produced for somebody beside myself, because most of the films that I produce is the films I direct as well. But we have that mutual friendship and interest in certain subjects, and I was looking forward for many years to work with Alex, and I think the time has come, and I thought he's a brilliant writer. The minute I read the script, I was like, yeah, I'm on board. Well, let's do this. So it was not difficult at all, and again, it goes back always to the material. Like it's my humble experience, even in the past, with a lot of expectations to reach out to people, and you might say, oh, they might say no because of their names and who they are, and and their status. Like, we want to get them on board, but if you have strong material, changes everybody's mind. Like immediately, when somebody else in the industry reads strong material, immediately there will be like a positive response, and my response was absolutely, and it's been a pleasure, and we're trying actually to build on that successful Lamia's poem and do other projects together as well.
Well, you know the famous movie Casablanca. The last line of Casablanca. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So this is just the beginning, I think, of our work together.
Tu peux nous expliquer, très résumé, ce que nous dit, s'il vous plaît, si tu veux. Ou bien.
There's a lot of hands up here.
Très résumé.
En français, c'est
ça? En français, oui, en français.
J'ai pas pris de notes. Sorry. Donc, moi, je voulais absolument travailler donc avec Sam, dit Alex, parce qu'effectivement, on se connaissait depuis une quinzaine d'années, et je voulais faire ce projet donc sur la Syrie. J'ai fait des recherches, j'ai interrogé des réfugiés, j'ai essayé de me renseigner, mais c'était important pour moi d'avoir effectivement un partenaire qui soit lui-même issu de ce contexte culturel, qui connaisse le pays, qui soit capable effectivement d'apporter aussi des éléments pour que ce soit juste. Et donc, on se connaît depuis longtemps, on n'avait jamais travaillé ensemble, et là, ça a été le moment de travailler ensemble. Je voulais absolument qu'il soit sur ce projet. Donc, je suis allé le voir, et ça me explique, oui, effectivement, moi, lorsque j'ai lu le script que m'a fait découvrir Alex, j'étais tout de suite enchanté, j'ai dit, il faut le faire tout de suite. La question comportait une part mention sur le fait que la production est l'aspect le plus difficile, mais pour nous ça n'a pas été. Il y a eu des difficultés sur la production, mais le fait qu'on se retrouve et qu'on travaille ensemble a été la part de la chose la plus facile. Et vraiment le script avait une telle force, ça explique donc ça, que moi j'étais d'emblée emballé, je voulais en être, et c'est une constante aussi dans mon propre travail. C'est la première fois que je travaille en animation, c'est la première fois que je travaillais pour produire quelqu'un d'autre que moi. Quand j'ai travaillé avec un producteur, c'était souvent pour faire mes propres films. Et donc c'était une nouvelle expérience, mais le matériau était tellement fort que, et lorsque vous avez un matériau qui est très fort comme ça, vous pouvez aller voir effectivement des gens très différents, vous aurez des réponses positives. C'est la force du matériau qui permet de construire les projets. Voilà.
Et la première personne, enfant, qu'il a rencontré dans le camp de réfugiés s'appelait Lamia, c'est pour ça qu'il a repris le prénom pour le film.
Good morning. I'm Mohamed Hamidi, a journalism student at Dai University of Information and Communication in Arabat. And I want to ask you, Mr. Sam Kadi, I will ask you in Arabic because we have to make diversity in the language of questions. كما تعلم سنة بعد سنة يزداد الاهتمام بهذا النوع السينمائي، سينما التحريك، ومع يعني تزداد مهرجانات التي تهتم بهذا النوع. سؤال يعني انطلاقا من حضورك يعني لعدد من المهرجانات من هذا النوع. ما الذي يميز مهرجان مكناس بالضبط، ويعني تحديدا ما الذي يميز هذه الدورة؟ يعني إن كنت حضرت باقي يعني الدورات، ما الذي يميز هذه الدورة بالضبط؟
حقيقة أول دورة أحضرها في مهرجان مكناس. ذهبنا إلى العديد من المهرجانات العالمية. بدأنا بمهرجان أنسي في فرنسا في افتتاح الفيلم لاميا ومهرجانات أخرى في أمريكا، في فانكوفر، زيورخ، مهرجانات عديدة. هذه أول وقفة عربية في مهرجان مكناس. ما أتوقعه أنا وأليكس، ما رأيناه هنا كنا سعداء جدا به، وهو هذا المهرجان كيف نقول بالعربي، يعني the festival caters to the Moroccan filmmakers. يعد المهرجان موجه ليعد صناع الأفلام المغربيين ليطلعهم عن ماذا يجري في العالم وليشارك أعمالهم وليشجعهم. فما أسعدني كثيرا هو رؤية العديد من الشباب المغربي قادم من مسافات بعيدة، وهو شباب يدرس الإخراج السينمائي وصناعة السينما المتحركة، أفلام الرسوم المتحركة، ووجود كما أخبرت مؤخرا استوديو أو أكثر من استوديو لصناعة الرسوم المتحركة. وتقابلت مع أساتذة في الجامعات يحضرون هذا المهرجان، هم يدرسون هذا النوع من الصناعة. فتفاجأت بصراحة، يعني we were surprised يعني أليكس، لم نتوقع هذا. يعني توقعنا في معظم المهرجانات تأخذ الطبع العالمي ويتم نسيان الناس الداخلين، الشباب أصحاب هذه المدينة. وهنا هذا المهرجان يخصص الجهود لكم للمغربيين، وهذا الشيء يسعدني لأنه نريد في المنطقة العربية إعداد الجيل القادم الذي يعبر عن رأيه بطريقة فنية، يرسل رسائله ويعبر عن همومه وصوته بطريقة فنية ترضي من ترضي وتزعج من تزعج، ولكن هذا هو الصوت الحر بطريقة فنية، وهي أرقى أنواع التأدية. فهذا أسرنا جميعا، وأتوقع أنه مهرجان فريد في المنطقة العربية أنه مخصص فقط للأفلام المتحركة. فسعداء جدا بوجودنا هنا، ونتمنى العودة مرة أخرى معهم.
بالنسبة للملاحظ، يعني أرى بأن التجربة الأمريكية في مجال سينما التحريك يعني متواضعة مقارنة مع التجربة اليابانية. برأيك يعني ما السبب وراء هذا التواضع في هذه التجربة؟ يعني هو راجع يعني السوق من الأمريكية محدودة.
I think you need to translate that. This is an interesting question too. It's humbling, this question.
Actually, he was asking about the gap between the success of the Japanese productions in animation cinema and the American one. Even if American cinema is very successful through the world, but in anime and in animation film, Japan has the first
the upper hand.
I can venture one part of an answer. In America, animation is dominated by one company, Disney, and now Disney Pixar together. They dominate. They're 98% of all the theater space goes to Disney films. So the space left for independent, more serious animations in theaters is tiny, very small. So there's not supply and demand. There's not a big demand. There's tiny demand for animated films of a serious nature or a beautiful nature or artistic nature. There's a very tiny demand for that. And in fact, when the award shows happen, always there'll be maybe 4 wonderful, artistic, animated, small films, and there'll be, Aladdin or Lion King. And guess who wins every time? Aladdin or Lion King. So there just isn't a lot of support. Now it's beginning to change, particularly with streamers. It's created a whole new platform for animation in America to begin to develop, and it is developing more now. It's beginning to grow. It's still tiny, but it's beginning to grow. Whereas I think that in Japan and other places, it's a much more favorable environment for artistically made. And I would imagine that Disney crowds out your market as well at times. It's probably hard even for that. So,
I mean, there are 2 different systems. And we can't deny that there are classics that were made by Disney. I mean, all of us know Beauty and the Beast, and know Aladdin, and I know these amazing movies, and the Cinderella's movies, and all these great animation and Pixar and Toy Story. I mean, we all know these movies. However, as Alex mentioned, that room for independent filmmaking within animation, it's very tough in the United States because what Americans are exposed to are massive budgets, animation films that there's no independent filmmaker can afford, or an independent producer can afford to put the money in. I mean, you're talking about a Disney movie. I mean, it's at $50 million, $70 million, $100 million. No independent filmmaker or producer will put that amount of money and the effort. It's a big, gigantic machine to make movies like this, and it leaves little room for the independent films.
Yes. But it isn't just the budgets, because I was involved with a film made out of Dubai that had a $60 million budget. It was high-class 3D animation. It still had a very limited release in the U.S. because it isn't just Disney has the ability to make the movies, but they also have the ability to, it's called vertical integration. They have an inroad to theaters. I mean, in America, there's only so many screens, right? So many, everywhere that's like the case. And Disney has control over a lot of those screens. And even if you make a $60 million film, like Bilal was called Bilal, it also is going to struggle to get exposure. So
I have a question in this. Excuse me. I have a question in the same way. In Marrakesh Film Festival, I met a lot of American feature films directors, and we talk about their relationship with the major studios, and in future they try to resist to the major company to do independent films. My question is, in animation, is there the same system with independent animation films, like in independent films in feature film?
I'm sorry, what was the system that you were describing? You said you're asking is the same system, but what was the system you meant?
It's like as difficult, you mean? Is
The
it as
organization
difficult?
of independent producers.
To do feature
Yeah,
films,
the
they can do independent films.
Independent producers
yes,
have a big struggle always. So, for example, like if you're looking at a Netflix or HBO, they produce most of their product. They don't acquire it. So, as an independent producer, you make a film, but getting it on Netflix or getting it on HBO is very hard, because they tend to produce the projects that they want. So you really should encourage independent filmmaking, because it's tough. Like, we're both independent filmmakers, and we're independent filmmakers because we're making films because we want to express certain ideas. We want to express certain artistic ideas. that aren't necessarily commercial. You know what I'm trying to say? That don't necessarily or aren't going to necessarily get big money, like a Disney film or those kinds of films. They get big money. The films we make really are about trying to make the world better in the end. We're trying to make the world more beautiful in the end. So it is a big struggle to do that. And the same system applies to animation, independent filmmaking, maybe even more so than live action. So feel sorry for us.
It's an assembly line style of industry where if you make one and they know this works, they will try not to change it because they know how to market it. They don't want to put any efforts in pushing it. They know, okay, that type of story has its own audience. This genre can find these people. Let's make 20 films of that type of things, and all of a sudden the pipeline is clogged with these kind of films. And now, as an independent filmmaker trying to break through and navigate through to get your film made by the studios, you always, that rejection immediately because it's like, okay, well, how are we gonna promote a story like if it's like Lamia's poem, or how can we're gonna promote a movie like possibly, Children of the Sea, or how are we gonna like they might find it's like, well, that doesn't fit our audience, even though it's totally wrong. They don't want to put the efforts to release it, even though the audience are thirsty for something. It doesn't fit that, so that format and that model. I mean, there are definitely exceptions all the time, but it's different than Europe, for instance, or in part of Asia. There are subsidies by the government where you could get support and funding, and most filmmakers live off of the funding that get from the government and the subsidies, and they combine. Always in international films, it's amazing the opening sequence of 20, basically 20 companies or 20 countries involved in one movie. Yes. Because he collected $200,000 from here and $500,000 from here, and it's all subsidies to put together to make a film. And it's a little complicated, but it works. In the United States, you're left on your own. It's an investment-based industry. So they look at it more as business than art, where it's still in Asia and Europe, it's looked at as art more than business.
Yeah, good point.
In Asia, I don't know, but in Japan, you have almost no public funding. It's
in Japan, it's like
business-based.
Business-based. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so that's the challenge. It's a great challenge.
But in Japan, would you say that there's more of an audience for artistic films, or is it the same as we're describing here in America?
I mean, for cinema in general, even beyond animation, it's a field that has been completely left to the business, to the industry. Yeah.
So investors and
completely. So actually, cinema in a country like Japan, cinema still now is not fully considered as an art form. Cinema is depending on the Ministry of Economy and Industry, and so it's a complete gap. For instance, with Europe, it's a reason why some European countries would like to build relationships, co-production agreements with Japan, and it's not possible because, for instance, in France, cinema is depending on the Ministry of Culture, and in Japan, it's the Ministry of Industry, so they don't speak the same language. So they're trying for years, for decades, to build that agreement. They just can't.
So I would like him to answer what explains the success of his film.
それで何の公的資金とかそういった国などの支援とか評価のないまま発達したその日本での作品がどのようにしてその国民成功を収めることができたんでしょうか。観客のやはり。
でも観客そうですよね。オーディエンスがあってのことだと思いますので、市場に重ねるためのタイトルをやっぱ出すのがうまい。ただ構造はもう出来上がっちゃってるんで。果たしてそれがだから要するに大衆受けするものが良質なものかというのとはちょっと乖離していると思います。そこはやっぱりちゃんと作る意思があって作られているものとやっぱり言葉は悪いけどお金集めると、巨大なこの大ヒットを生むためのそのビジネスモデルが非常に今出来上がりつつある。もう公開の前で映画を誰も見てないのに解約は決まってるとかたくさんのその資本がすでに入ってきてる。でそうですね、あたかもいいものかのごとく宣伝の力を借りて もう刷り込みで
あ、それ
で
もやっぱりアメリカと。
そうちょっと近いところが非常にまあ似てますよね。
So everything is basically it's based the success of any kind of production is based of course on audience reactions, right? So there's a structure. There's a lot of movies produced in Japan, and I have a doubt about the idea that film that with a massive success is necessarily a good film,
Right.
So you have in Japan you have big successes that are made through a model, of course, calculated to
Yes.
get big audience reaction, to gather big budgets, and so you have big films with tie-ups and everything. There's a model for that. So and you have different kind of projects also, and every year, you have some big success in Japan that are really following that model. In that way, I would say it's quite similar to what we're talking about in the United States.
Interesting. I think she had her hand up for a while. And then you're next.
So my question is dedicated to Mr. Alex and Sam. So we know that Sam is from Syria. Have you ever had the idea of producing or making something for Syria, either its history or its culture, or maybe something that can describe the situation or the war in Syria?
He did.
Yeah, I did. I already made a film. Unfortunately, it was not in collaboration with Alex. That was my actually last project before Lamia's poem. It was a feature-length documentary that actually it was called Little Gandhi, and it's about a Syrian peace activist who started actually the movement. One of the young kids who started the movement in Syria back in 2011 peacefully. Inspired by Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and he lived in the suburb of Damascus and rallied so many people behind him to lead a movement and of like college kids and youngsters just to seeking to a path to have a dialogue with the government. Unfortunately, he was captured and tortured to death at age 25. And he was known as Little Gandhi. Actually, the nickname of Little Gandhi was given to him by Washington Post. His funeral was attended by 12 ambassadors from around the world during the conflict in Syria back in 2011. I thought that character holds together everything unique about a human being and belief and I think the essence of being a good citizen, and he was trying to do the right thing, just not protesting, he's actually trying to open a dialogue peacefully. He used to pass roses and bottles of water to the people who were shooting at him, and there are footage of that. So I made a full feature-length documentary about him, and was actually the first Syrian film ever to be officially selected for the Oscars under the name of Syria back in 2017. So that was definitely, even though it's a movie about like just a human being trying to do the right thing, but it ended up being definitely very political because it's a very hot subject. So I did this, then moved on to work with Alex on this. So tried to separate the two, and Lamia's poem is totally different than like Little Gandhi. So if you want to know more about Syria, what happened in Syria, and how things started actually before 2011. In the film, we take it all the way back to 2008, when there was actually a movement in Syria that was a peaceful movement that was kind of like crushed, and then in 2003. So we take it back just to give the people understanding of the whole environment and how things led to the beginning of that movement and the Arab Spring and all that thing. And we take it all the way to 2016 in the film, so you could check it out.
And as far as my own work, though I'm, except for Lamia's poem, not focused on Syria, for 20 years we've been making documentaries about the Muslim world and Muslim history. So we've had documentaries about Islamic art. We have had documentaries of the rise and fall of Islamic Spain, a heroic Muslim woman during World War II, story of a Muslim who helped end the Crusades. So that's the storytelling I do. I'm I'm trying to tell a Muslim story to the world, which is all mainly misunderstood or not known, even among Muslims. Even among Muslims. So that's the work that I do, and Lamia's poem is just another extension of that.
Yeah, you should check out some amazing stuff they have done over the years, and very unique, especially in the United States.
Now you. And only if you're asking the question to Sam and me. If you're asking them, forget it.
Yeah. I mean, either you're on our side or their side. You have to
Good morning. Welcome to Morocco because it's your first time here, and thank you for sharing with us the national premiere of Lamia's poems in this festival. My question is for both of you. Do you think that animation format is more adapted to tell hard realities or hard stories, and to make them more easier for the understanding of a larger audience? And do you think of working on a series, both of you, about childhood, war, migration topics, or are you working on another common project?
So, this is my opinion. Other people might have different opinions. I think, actually, in the American space at least, there's two audiences for animation: children and adults. And children, for a children's animation, you got to have a talking donkey or something, right? That's it. So, yeah, right, exactly. So it's not suitable for serious, heavy topics. Right? For adult animation, talking about formulas, adult animation increasingly is very formulaic, in as much as there's an expectation of violence, there's an expectation of blood. That's an expectation in those kind of films now, to hold an adult audience, right? So again, the space to tell serious stories in animation is not a big space. It's a smaller space. And with Lamia's poem, we're trying to bridge that. We're trying to see the film that is appealing to adults, also suitable for younger audiences, and we'll see. I mean, we're here at this film festival. We're trying to distribute the film now. We'll see what happens. Maybe a year from now, I'll be able to answer that question a little better. As far as future projects, we actually are working on another animation project right now. It's a pretty cool one. It's different than Lamia's poem, but it's one that may be a little more suited for the adult audience that we were just discussing, though still a serious film dealing with serious topics. So again, next year, ask that question, and I'll be able to answer better.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a little brief background, and please guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember the first time I was exposed to an adult animation. I was in Cannes Film Festival 2012, and it was the film Waltz with Bashir. And it wasn't the official selection. It was a film about the war in Lebanon. And I remember I was really stunned and surprised that there's an adult animation about war in the official selection in Cannes. I think it was new even to the French people, I think too. So I think the film ended up being very successful and very unique and very artistic, and I think it set and opened doors for the world of adult animation. I mean, everything starts with a success story. I mean, I remember also documentary being commercial and profitable. It started in the United States with Michael Moore when he started making movies about 9/11, and Michael Moore. He's from the state of Michigan, where I lived there for so long. He lived like about an hour from where I used to live, and all of a sudden that documentary everybody wants to see, and the movie made so much money, and he won an Oscar for it, and then documentaries became the next hot thing.
Yeah.
So it starts always with that story. So I felt that film Waltz with Bashir opened that door that actually adults can go and watch animation, not to expect to see speaking donkeys and Shrek on the screen. There are other stuff that we could actually we have sometimes more freedom in expressing what we want using the platform and the format of animation, because you could draw that incredible, fantastic world, and you could let your imagination just flow, and you can dive so deep into that world without costing you $200 million to set as a piece set in a, like a drama, and it's more accessible. We feel like, as like the animation format, especially for family, they're so used to it. So you could still have serious topic that's like even Lamia's poem. I mean, I've had this experience. Unfortunately, Alex was shooting a documentary. He couldn't be with me, but at Zurich Film Festival, we did a screening specifically for, I think, school kids. We had kids like 8 years old to 11 and 12 years old, and I wasn't sure. That was really early after we finished the film, and I didn't know if they can really understand the story. I mean, our story is a little complicated, 3 worlds, and happening at the same time. These kids are just incredible. I mean, they dug everything. I mean, they were asking me during the Q&A and stuff that I didn't even get from the press. Like the motif, what's our motive? What's that? Like, not just the inspiration. Why he's planting his flute? Why he did this? What was the reference of the? They're like 8, 9 years old, and they understood everything in the film, and they had all the right questions. So it just shows that the new generation is don't take them for granted. They're very sophisticated, and they could understand this. And animation is great because they feel, oh, that's for us, and they go with their families. But then now there are some serious stories that you could cater to them, and you could also make an adult animation. So it's exciting that this new world of adult animation that's out there, or at least serious topics that could be for both, for young teens and family. And the next project we're working on here, Alex, right now, it's more catered toward, I would say, like teen and adults. But it's another one that deals with humans and their struggle, in life and their survivals. And I hope that we could share it with you sometime soon.
What is his next project?
次のお仕事はどう今。
ふんわりです。ふんわり。ふんわり。
It's not very clear. It's
In development.
it's foggy.
That's foggy.
Yeah.
Yes, I
No
understand.
right. No right.
Not ready for prime time discussion.
We don't need translation. So
We understand
We
that.
understand
We know
that.
what that means.
Yeah, that's universal. That's universal.
exactly.
Well, I always, the hardest thing for me is always that question. Like you spend 2 years sweating, bleeding, crying, making the film, and you bring it to an audience, and it's just like you want to sit back and the first question you get is, what's the next one? It's like, oh God, I just finished this, give me a break. So I'm sorry for asking that question.
No, we learned even at school. It's like when you finish your film and you wanna, let's say you're lucky to get into a festival, we'll make sure you know what's your next film.
Yes.
Because that's what you're gonna get asked, and you better take advantage of it because you are in the right environment to pitch your next project. And don't say, I'm still thinking about it. But he's so accomplished that he could afford to say that.
That's how you know when you've arrived. When you can say,
I don't know.
just wait.
Yeah.
We have in our back pocket. Here it is.
Is that sound effect for our?
No, it's from the
Another conference. Another
it's a
thing.
making film.
That's
Making
interesting. Okay.
I have a question for both of you. Do you think the platforms change the relationships between the directors and their audience?
Do you think the platform changed the relation between the directors and the audience?
Do you think before this relationship was better than now?
Well, if I understand your question, I can say that when the major streamers were first beginning, Netflix, let's just focus on Netflix, it was an amazing period for independent filmmakers because they were initially just acquiring films and they were trying to get as much content as they could because they were trying to build up their library. So for 3, 4, 5 years in the beginning, being an independent filmmaker and getting your film taken was very, very positive. But now it's not like that anymore. Now Netflix, it started to move, because we've been in conversation with Netflix on a number of things. So it went from they're buying films to, well, pitch a film and then we'll greenlight it, give you some money, to now we make the films entirely in-house. Maybe they'll take your idea, but generally even that, because they have a development team. So it's now changed. And as I'm saying, it's much harder to get into those platforms now. So yes, the relationship has, the relationship between director and audience has been impacted by the platform, because the platform now has put up barriers from the director to get to his audience or her audience.
They change basically, platforms and streamers have changed completely the system. I mean, overall, they changed the system of cinema. And it's an evolving process that we're still going through, and we're still trying to absorb the shock that actually the film that we spent years on making, now somebody sitting in the corner watching it on his iPhone or his iPad. For me, it's crushing. Like, for me, it's like, I don't want to even see that, because it hurts. You know, when you design, okay, with, you know, the landscape of your movie and the anamorphic lenses and the lighting and the guy he's like just seeing it on that, you know, like Scorsese sees this person, he could have, like, you know, a major health issue, like seeing and watching on this. So it's just it changed the way and maybe that's the way to, maybe we as filmmakers, we have to adapt to that next thing. Is like, yeah, that's the new reality. But I think, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the streamers. I mean, don't tell anybody. But because I feel who they are impacting not just the system, but us as a filmmakers, we are robbed of the real experience.
Yes.
And I think that hurts a lot. I mean, as a filmmaker, like Netflix making a movie. I have friends that they, you know, made few movies for Netflix. Literally, they haven't gone through any the regular routes where filmmaker need to go and experience and have the fun and love of getting together, like here,
yes, live,
right?
Live
because Netflix made it, it's done. After 2 weeks, it's like they will promote it for about 2 weeks that it's coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. And you might get a little bit of press, like, you know, just somebody call you on a phone or something, get some question from you, and all of a sudden the film is on Netflix. And the first week, oh, you're excited, oh, maybe now it's the #2 movie, the #1 movie, the #3. The next week, moved on, there's a new movie, nobody's talking about your movie anymore. Yes. And all of a sudden it's like you got paid well, handsomely, to make this movie, but
the fulfillment
is not there. That communication, that experience of like seeing people, talking to people, the film festivals, the awards, because that's what inspires us. I think that's the top of the pyramid for us, which is seeing it on the big screen. So I feel we've been robbed of doing this, and I hope we find a balance. Like now, big filmmakers, like for instance, when Scorsese like making The Irishman, or
yes,
with like
the audience are robbed from that.
Exactly, but Scorsese said, okay, look, listen, this is great. You're giving us all the money we need, because he's Scorsese. All of a sudden, he thought he needs extra $50 million, and then, you know, it's like Netflix, I'll do it. And even now, Paramount, like he had a new movie that Paramount said, we're not giving you extra $50 million, so Apple said, we'll give you that. So now his new movie is going to be on Apple. But he is actually putting his own conditions where I need a theatrical. You must have at least like 2 weeks of theatrical. You can't go straight on. So because he's so strong and he has a big name. But if you are not up there, your movie is going straight to that digital platform, and then again you're robbed of that process. You made the movie you want to make, but would people remember what you made? Would you make a film, a name for yourself? It depends. If you made something extremely unique and all of a sudden it could be up for awards, now maybe you are in a different category. Otherwise, it's on next.
How important is his connection to his audience? Does he need his audience to be creative, or is he kind of
鑑賞客とか受け手の存在はどれぐらいどのように重要なのか。 の場合はその、作品作る上で作るためにこうそういう観客像と申しますか、
でも僕もやはりこういう伝えたいものっていうのをまず自分の中で見極めて、それをこうどういうふうに伝えるべきかっていうことを、やはり考え抜いて作りたいと思ってますので、やっぱりそのまずヒットありきというよりはやっぱり作る理由と届けたい相手と、その届けたい相手とやはり感動というか、それを分かち合うことをやっぱ夢見てますので、例えばそういう大きな資本を入れるために、描くべきものを曲げたりするっていうことはなるべくしたくない。さあ、このスタジオ 4°C っていうのはそういう流れを立ってくれる会社なので、どちらかというと作り手側に立って本当に作りたいものを、作りたい形になるまで頑張って作ろうと。それは分かってくれる人たちがたとえ少なくても作る価値があるんだってことが自分たちがまず見出して作れるかどうかのがまず大事なので、だからやっぱり、そういう考え方ですかね。
What's important for me is, to think over about what I want to tell with the film, the project. So I need to go through that reflection, go to the end, and then rather than having the conditions to have a big success, I have an idea of what I want to tell. I have an idea of who I want to tell it to, so who I want it to deliver to. Have an image of that, and so what's driving me as a filmmaker is to try to reach through the project that kind of mutual understanding with the viewer, and I try to escape from the conditions where you need to change and deform what's important for you in order to reach a bigger or broader audience. And fortunately enough, I'm working with a studio named 4° C, which stands rather on the creator side. So even if the audience we know it may be smaller, we try to reach that kind of audience. So that's what's important for us.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. New people, I don't know if you all have any questions. I don't want to forget you. This is a question and answer session. So any questions? Feel free.
So my last question is for you all. So Mr. Watanabe, Mr. Alex, and Mr. Sam, can Morocco one day be a source of inspiration in one of your future projects?
今度のお仕事の中でモロッコが例えば何でしょうか、インスピレーションの源になることはあり得るんでしょうか。
いや、もうだってもうモロッコに僕いるんで、もう僕の中にモロッコは間違いなくあるから、たとえどう書いたとしてもモロッコで見てもらうことを前提に多分モロッコで見てもらうことを前提じゃなくて、モロッコで見てもらうことも想定しておそらく作る。
だってそのモロッコに財を得た作品を作るような可能性があるのか。
そうですね。
そういう体験したの。
約束になってしまうからね。
そうね。
これだから要するにプロミスになっちゃうからね。あれだけど、でもね、非常に作りたいと思ってますし、インスピレーションを感じますね。
Well, I'm here in Morocco right now, and this experience obviously is changing me. It's something that I will bring back with me in Japan. I cannot tell you for sure. I can't promise you something like that, but the idea is seducing for me. Yeah, right.
Yes. I'm going to do a film about couscous. No, seriously. I already am, the wheels are already turning. I spent the better part of this morning just looking out at the cityscape and hearing sounds, and I feel something beginning to, format beginning to join. So yes, I mean, I don't. You and I was talking to somebody about this earlier. Morocco has been extremely influential for many American Muslims. Most American Muslims of a certain generation became Muslim after coming to Morocco. Right? Some of the most famous American Muslims today came to Morocco in the late 1960s and the 70s, and left as Muslims, and they have now become very influential in America. So Morocco has this unique ability